Watch this.
For those of you who had transnational terrorism tied to Idaho on their 2024 bingo card, congratulations. But these types of activities are not a game, and they lead to real violence. Our U.S. Attorney explains what this means and why it's not just about trolling online. Another intricate international incident with Idaho ties, likely one you never knew about. The former mayor of Meridian learned her daughter was put in prison in Egypt under false pretenses. She's telling her family's story in a new book and to us. You know, our ranked choice voting story certainly sparked some choice words from our viewers. So many, we couldn't share them all until today. Well, it's no secret, Idaho certainly has a history of extremism, domestic terrorism, and white supremacy. But never before have the terms transnational terrorism or terrorgram collective have been linked to Idaho. That is until this month. A Boise man was extradited to California this week for allegedly helping coordinate terrorist activities in Europe, thus the transnational terrorism charge. And he did it over the messenger app Telegram, according to the U.S. Attorney for Idaho, thus the terrorgram collective. According to this indictment, this group, under the direction of Matthew Allison from Boise, didn't just talk about doing stuff online. They actually caused violence to happen. Joe Paris sat down with U.S. Attorney Josh Hurwitz to learn about the case and how it fits into a bigger picture.
A Boise man faces charges for his alleged involvement in leading the Terrorgram Collective, a transnational terrorist group operating on the Telegram platform.
These are alleged to be white supremacists who believe in accelerationalism, so they want to have a race war by white people against non-white people.
Josh Hurwitz is the U.S. Attorney for the District of Idaho. His office is part of a multi-agency investigation into the Terrorgram Collective.
And they have solicited and provided instructions and inspired certain attacks actually around the world.
Matthew Allison of Boise is charged with soliciting hate crimes, soliciting murder of federal officials, and conspiring to provide material support to terrorists who perpetrated 2 attacks in Europe.
There have been attacks overseas, one in Slovakia in particular, that was linked directly to this group, and as alleged that the leaders of Terrorgram celebrated as the results of their conduct.
Investigations like this are not unique to Idaho or even one area of the country. This is a front and center problem for Americans.
I think it does sadly fit with what we're seeing in the what we call the violent extremism realm. So the internet, social media is used by groups, individuals to not only convey their ideology and their messages, but actually to try to incite violence.
In Idaho, Hurwitz explains that this has been seen in 2 different directions.
We've seen individuals who have gone down a rabbit hole, so to speak, of extremism and become radicalized and then sought to do violence. This is sort of on the other side, from the other direction. These are a collective, right, Terrorgram, working together to try to actually cause other people to commit violence and other crimes.
Extremist groups use social media, private messaging apps, and covert digital communications to coordinate. It's a serious symptom that investigators follow. It's not just trolling online for attention.
When we talk about internet trolling, we think of just rude comments, or at least I do, rude comments online that are frankly protected by the First Amendment. So we don't, at the Department of Justice and our law enforcement partners, this is true of them as well, we don't police speech and thought and nasty comments online. But words can be used to commit crimes, and that's what we see in some of the cases involving what we call, again, violent extremism, where people are trying to cause violence by soliciting murders, things like that, or making direct threats of violence. That's also unlawful.
Extremism, hate, and violent rhetoric are in the mainstream on a daily basis. But Hurwitz believes these are not just things we need to adjust to and put up with.
I don't like to think of it that way. I like to think of it as it's a problem that we need to attack collectively. We've, as a nation, right, struggled with racism and white supremacy throughout our history. Idaho is no different, but I also think that in Idaho we've shown that we can stand up to neo-Nazi groups and violent extremists, and it's time to do that again.
Hurwitz added Talking about things like white supremacy in the media and as a community, it's a major step in addressing these problems. A community problem that can be dealt with, he says. Matthew Allison is now awaiting a court date in Sacramento to face those 15 federal charges. There's a hashtag that became a movement back in 2021. The hashtag was "Text Me When You Get Home." There's a documentary about it as well. It was used to create awareness and spark a conversation about the vulnerability and the lack of safety women feel when alone in public. Well, it was about that time the former mayor of Meridian, Tammy DeVeard, and her husband sent their daughter off on a trip to Egypt. But they didn't hear from her when she got there. They didn't know if she made it okay. It wasn't until a week later when they learned their daughter was being held in a prison in Cairo on false charges. That story and how their daughter was finally able to come home is the subject of a new book out next week. Well, this Sunday on Viewpoint, the DeVeard family sits down with Joe Paris to talk about their family story. Their daughter was picked up by Egyptian authorities for being suspected of trafficking drugs. And at the time, the DeVeards weren't even sure if their daughter was alive. Days went by, sleepless nights for the family. Finally, an Egyptian lawyer reached out with a message from their daughter.
It was a scribbled note on a brown paper bag, and it was actually a note from Hannah. And it was smuggled out of this jail because in where she was at, she could not, there was no contact. Even her attorney, we find out, could not go and visit her there. So, that's how their rules were. So she had a note smuggled out through one of the other women that was released. And that note had gone via that attorney we had, was text to us, and it was this brown little note. And it said, hey, Mom and Dad, don't worry about me. God is telling me that you're doing everything to get me out of here. And it just like...
Pretty tough. Yeah, the book is called, as you see there on the bottom, "When We Could Not See the Moon," a nod to the perseverance shown through this challenging time.
She couldn't see the moon, even though the moon was still there. Kind of like faith. You can't see it all the time, but you always know it's there. This is why we felt that this was the appropriate title. Is there are times that you can't see it, but you do know it's there and you still have faith in it. It was incredible how faith and community really helped lift us up, support us, and find...
Around the world, what became so clear to us, everybody has good in them and maybe bad. But it felt like there was a greater hand that was leaning into the good of people here in Idaho, but way beyond. People from different faiths, from different languages, different cultures. We ultimately all connected. And yeah, you have to read the book on these crazy things that we ultimately were faced with and people that we had to engage with.
The DeVeard family had to navigate a very different justice system in Egypt, all while connecting with incredible strangers along the way, as you heard. You can catch the full episode of Viewpoint Sunday morning at 9 a.m. right here on Idaho's News Channel 7. Probably viewer comments today, but we're continuing our conversation about ranked choice voting after the story we did on it yesterday. We got dozens of text messages, most of which we were not able to share at the end of yesterday's show because of time. Today, we have the time, and we have a recap of the ranked choice voting demonstration we did with our station employees. We had 40 people vote on 2 races, what to eat for lunch and what to drink with that lunch. The candidates were tacos, hamburgers, pizza, sandwiches, and salad. And then to drink, it was either Coke, Pepsi, 7-Up water, or Dr. Pepper. And they were supposed to rank them on their ballots 1 through 5, 1 being what they wanted most, and so on. When it came to drinks, water was the runaway favorite in that first round of counting. But after that first round of counting the first choice votes, H2O only had 20 votes, which is 1 shy of the 50% plus 1, the majority it needed to win.
Go from 5 candidates to 1 winner with a simple majority. It's a simple system.
So the tally
First step,
we take the last
look
place,
to who finished last.
which would be 7-Up.
Okay, so what do we got for
And
7?
we throw that one out and we take their second choice
Yes.
and give it to somebody else.
Yeah, so who did our 7-Up? Our
7-Up's second choice was Coca-Cola. So if you want to mark down to Coca-Cola.
So let's do that. So we'll add a vote here for
Do we cross 7-Up out?
And we can, they're out of the running.
They're out of the running.
Still not a predominant winner.
Okay. So now, what do we do?
We got to go to our next lowest. So Pepsi now is the lowest vote getter. We already know they're going to be out of the running, but we got to look at these 4 votes to see who their second choice votes were.
This one would be, second choice would be Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
Okay. This one, second choice is water.
So that's going to be it.
Dr. Hunt says it's common for the early favorite to eventually wind up winning.
So you get the gist on how that ranked choice voting thing works. Water was the winner, and so was tacos, which was also the front runner after the first round of counting. Yay, tacos and water. The whole point was to show how ranked choice works with the help of a Boise State political scientist, as you just heard from, who has an expertise in elections. That was Dr. Charles Hunt, who explained ranked choice voting as an election, is designed, to produce a winner that has majority support in some fashion, either through first place votes where they get that 50% plus 1 in the first round, or through second or third place votes. And with it, he says, voters have a clearer and more nuanced way of reflecting their preferences, to which you, our viewers, had a way of reflecting your nuanced thoughts about it.
Like Lori from Eagle, who now wants tacos, wrote in to say, "Thanks for the information, so we can make an educated vote. Great job on the ranked choice voting demo," said Doug C. from Nampa. "Couldn't get any clearer than that." Bill in Meridian, he wasn't going to vote on this issue if he didn't understand it. Well, now that he does, he says, "I can vote wisely." From Sue, near BSU, easy to understand, seems fair, and will likely result in the more generally appealing candidates winning. Is that why Mr. Moyle and the GOP are so scared? Then on the other side, Albert believes ranked choice voting is a somewhat convoluted way of electing officials. Albert doesn't want to get used to a corruptible system that has questions about it. While Doug in Boise now understands it a lot better, but it still sucks. Algorithms or not, the machines can still be manipulated. 1 vote, 1 choice. And his choice, and his wife's, will be to vote with Moyle. And finally, from Leanne in Fruitland, a simple take. Ranking votes is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Okay, some of them not so nuanced. But for a lot of you, it was easy to understand, which goes against one of the major criticisms of ranked choice voting. One of several, that is. It's confusing, it's time-consuming, it's questionable, and it's costly. Several of our viewers yesterday mentioned Mr. Mike Moyle, that would be the Speaker of the House, Mike Moyle. And the reason we brought him up is because he wrote all of those criticisms in an opinion piece written by him for Idaho Ed News. And so we wanted him to explain some of his complaints, specifically what he wrote at the end of his op-ed for Idaho Ed News.
Start a process that nobody's ever going to trust when it's done. Yeah. And
why wouldn't they trust it?
It could have something to do with what Speaker Moyle wrote at the end of his op-ed. Of the 2 companies able to supply ranked choice voting machines, one is Dominion Voting Systems. This is deeply concerning to me.
Dominion machines, and I think there may be one other company that makes machines that can do these algorithms, right?
Okay, so Speaker Moyle using air quotes when talking about algorithms as if they are some sort of witchcraft that nobody understands prompted a few text messages yesterday, which, like Becky from Boise pointing out, algorithm is a fancy word for math. There are many applications, many tools that do algorithms for you. It's called coding. It's been around for years, nothing new. Welcome to the 21st century, she said. By the way, Speaker Moyle admitted he referred to Dominion because it was a buzzword, air quotes, but you might recognize it as a dog whistle to get attention because Speaker Moyle knows about Fox News, spending weeks using Dominion voting machines as the reason Donald Trump lost the 2020 presidential election, claiming the machines were hooked up to the internet, that they changed votes to Joe Biden, none of which was true, and it ended up costing Fox News nearly $800 million in a defamation lawsuit. But just to plant a seed of doubt about ranked choice voting, Speaker Moyle threw Dominion out there, even though nothing nefarious has ever been proven with their voting machines. I didn't have Speaker Moyle openly admitting his 2020 election denial on my bingo card. That's from Rod in Boise. Shame on us. As always, our Republican-led representatives and House Speaker are trying to put doubt on Prop 1. Bringing up Dominion will only cast doubt with those who believe they did something wrong. As with everything tied to a, quote, rigged election from 2020, it's just a lot of garbage, says Martian Star. Well, Dominion wasn't the only dog whistle used by Speaker Moyle. He went on about mistrusting the results by pointing to 2 states who currently use ranked choice voting, and they used it in 2022.
I'll use the last city example, right? They now have a Democrat congressman. They've never had one. And they're all going, hey, how did this happen? I didn't vote for the Democrat. It happened because they kept counting until they got to the end and got the Democrat to win. Maine's the same way. The Republican wins election night, the Democrat wins the next day. People are going to be mad when they figure out that they're being duped by this down ballot crap that they're not going to understand. It's confusing.
Well, that brought on Mr. Moyle seems to think the voting public isn't bright enough to vote, and he believes that arrogantly, she might add, said Nora. So about those claims that the favorite didn't end up winning in Alaska and Maine. As we pointed out yesterday, that's not how it happened. In the race for a congressional seat in Maine, the Democratic candidate was leading after the first round, 48% to 44% over the Republican candidate. Jared Golden ended up with the 53% of the win, or 53% of the vote, and won in the second round. So that didn't exactly work out that way. Meanwhile, in Alaska, same situation. The Democratic candidate led after the first round, with the Republican vote split between 2 candidates. And by the third round, Mary Peltola was across that majority threshold, making her the first Democratic representative in Congress from Alaska since 1973, but just not the first ever. So both sides show that their leader, well, actually won in the end. Great one-on-one interview with Representative Mike Moyle. It's good to see our leaders' thought processing in action. Wow, said Mike. Speaker Moyle using untruths to get attention. Isn't that the same tactic as saying cats and dogs being stolen for dinner? It's a bad Republican tactic, says Terry. So by the end of our interview that we did with Speaker Moyle on Wednesday, or this week, he referred back to our election demonstration as an example of, well, it's just too many choices and too much to handle.
Your dinner analogy is a good one. Mom decided in my house what we were having. We didn't get to go in there and say, hey, Mom, I want this, this, and this. And we didn't sit around the table and have a conference and everybody cast their votes and then pick 1, 2, 3. We had, hey, this is what's for dinner and you're going to eat it.
Did you like it?
Yeah.
Every time?
If I didn't, I sure as heck didn't complain.
Oh, that one prompted a few messages like this one. That analogy used by Speaker Moyle prompted Shirley to write in, so I guess Mom is the Republican Party in this situation, and we all have to just eat what they serve. In reference to Speaker's comment about his mother making dinner, wouldn't that be a dictatorship? That one's from Brian in Boise. You can see both the stories we did on ranked choice voting at ktvb.com or our YouTube channel, where you can find the whole show we did yesterday or any 208 episodes you may have missed. Well, the Daybell House has been demolished in eastern Idaho, and 2 new laws are having local implications. You would think it stops there, but Sophia Bliss has even more for you in today's 411.
Chad Daybell's old home is officially gone. Daybell is on Idaho's death row for murdering his first wife, Tammy, and 2 of his current wife's children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. All 3 were found dead on Daybell's Rexburg property in 2019. Last month, a nonprofit bought the infamous Idaho house from Daybell's attorney with plans of turning it into a place of healing. Part of that plan includes demolishing the house and outbuildings, which, as you can see, happened today. In response to recent threats, this Monday the Boise School Board is hosting a special meeting to address safety and security procedures. They're asking for your questions to help guide the conversation. Submit your questions online before noon on Monday. You can find the form on our website, ktvb.com. Monday's meeting starts at 5:30 at the District Services Center on Victory Road in Boise. You can also watch the live stream on the district's YouTube channel. The Post Falls Community Library Network won't be locking up objectionable material just yet. The proposal to create adult-only areas for the material was scrapped in last night's trustee meeting. This is in response to the harmful materials in libraries law that went into effect in July. The vice chair of the board said the proposal had too much conflicting language. Plus, other trustees said the libraries are already doing enough to censor material. Speaking of laws we've talked a lot about, Idaho Transportation Department took a step forward in renovating their old Boise headquarters on State Street. Last night, ITD's board withdrew a 2022 resolution. Now control of the old headquarters goes back to ITD. Long story short, the building flooded 2 years ago and was vacated. ITD was set to sell the property to a private buyer until the legislature blocked the sale this session because they said it was valuable. The private buyer filed a lawsuit against the state of Idaho, but the case was dismissed because there wasn't a binding contract. Last night's vote indicates they won't take legal action and will move forward with renovations. Yep, still me, but we're going to talk about your weather now. So you can see beautiful blue skies over in Boise at the moment, and that will really be the theme as we continue throughout the weekend with warm temperatures sticking around as well. So sticking with the temperatures, you can see getting close to 80 degrees in Treasure Valley spots, but for the Magic Valley, just a touch cooler. Just pleasant in the mountains as well, with the upper 60s or in the mid 70s expected. We'll see the clouds at times, and in valley locations we'll see some breezy conditions in the afternoon hours, but you can see specifically for Boise and a lot of the valley spots that's going to be closer to 20 miles an hour, which in general is not very much for us in valley locations. We can easily get those to get close to 50 miles an hour when we see some of those storming conditions. So this is a little bit on the pleasant side where, you know, it may cool you off a little bit with some of the warmer temperatures, but also if you're going to plan a picnic, it's good to account for that as well. But you can see more of the warm temperatures sticking around throughout your 7-day forecast.
All right, let's wrap up this week with some more ranked choice voting comments like this one from Rick. Ranked choice voting. I, for one, would not pick anyone other than who I would want to win. Your second choice should not be selected unless you truly would accept them winning, which is kind of what it is. You really want that one, but you'd be okay with this guy or woman if that's what you choose. Ranked choice voting, I don't get it. It allows you to select your favorite and next favorite. Isn't that the way humans make decisions? We rank according to merit. If you like the old way, then under our CV, just vote once, problem solved. Well, that creates exhausted ballot problems, and that could be a problem. If there was ever a way to cheat, this is it. Mike Moyle is right. It's not the voters cheating, it's the vote counters. Do you know that we still use machines, or we do use machines to count ballots right now, right? We'll see you next week.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.